welcome, Consumer Law 101 viewers and students. My name is Aaron Swift. I'm an attorney, CEO, and managing partner of Swift Law North, and I'm here today to present our very first video in the base series, which is what is a credit report and how to pull your official consumer credit reports. Okay, so today we're going to have an agenda of 3 items. First, we're going to talk about what is a credit report. Then we're going to talk about how to pull your official consumer reports. And our third agenda and final agenda on today's video will be consumer best practices as it relates to this topic. You'll actually find throughout the series that that is how we'll end all of the videos, which is with consumer best practices. Okay, so we're going to start very basic today. What is a credit report? And per the FDIC, a credit report is a detailed record of how you've managed your credit over time. Credit reports are used most often by lenders to make a credit determination and to determine the price of that credit. So let me just kind of put that in some more layman's terms as I break down that sentence. So it's just a record of how you manage your credit over time. Basically, it's your payment history, your credit history, your on-time payment history, whether you've made minimum payments or more than the minimum payment, those types of things. And then credit reports are most often used by lenders to use basically with credit scores to make a determination about credit. And then the price of that credit is usually the interest rate. Um, but then what does that mean in context? There's a lot to that term. So we can break it down into 3 topics from there, which is your credit history, your credit file, and your credit report. So the first one is actually your credit file. Your credit file is your entire history of all the information in your credit reports, whether that be information that is about your payment history, information about where you've lived. Your file is everything. And then your history is the history of a certain piece of information in your file. So it could be your credit history related to one account. It could be your credit history related to the length of your history. And all of that was in your credit file. But then basically what happens is when a credit report, and we're going to talk about different variations of even that term, when a credit report is pulled, you take information, bits and pieces of information from the credit history, which is within a credit file, and then from there you use that to generate a report. And that information is generated into a credit report, but that can look and and be so many different things. So another way to kind of think about this is a credit report versus consumer report versus a consumer disclosure. So a credit report is the vanilla term. It's used interchangeably. It's what you hear most on TV and commercials. It's probably what most of us refer to these things as your credit report. But there's actually some distinctions there. And one is what could be called, or what is called, a consumer report, and the other is a consumer disclosure. So your consumer report is when your information that's then put into a report is sent to someone else. It's a report about the consumer that's viewed by a different user. That could be a lender, an employer. We'll talk about in this video series a bunch of different users of consumer reports. But a consumer report is very specific. It's information from a credit reporting agency. We'll talk about what that means later as well. And that information is published to someone else, to a third party. If you contrast that with a consumer disclosure, that's the same type of information, your payment history, your addresses, all the things that are, in a credit report, but that's only disclosed to the consumer. So, for example, if you as the consumer request your credit report from annualcreditreport.com, that information comes to you in what's called a consumer disclosure. It's a type of credit report, but it's not a consumer report because it's not reported about you or about the consumer to third parties. It's only disclosed to the consumer. And then there are a whole other different types of credit reports and other types of reports. And we're going to get to those in our basic video number 7 in this series. But those are tenant screening reports, there's driving record reports, criminal background reports, and a whole host of other ones that we'll talk about again later. But those are also considered credit reports under the law. Okay, so how to pull your official consumer reports or official consumer disclosures then ultimately when it comes to you. The best place is to go to www.annualcreditreport.com. That's a website that's run as a repository of your free credit reports, which before you were able to access once a year on a rolling basis, 12 months. One of the positives of COVID is in this credit space. Now you can actually get your annual credit reports once a week. And pulling your own credit report or consumer disclosure from this website does not impact your scores at all. You can also call the 1877 number on the screen and you can request your annual credit reports from them directly via phone. And then I snip tooled the image on the right. There's a mail-in request form too that you can use, and that's very searchable. Google just annual credit report request form. I do want to make sure that we make a couple distinctions. If you get a report directly from one of the big three, you're going to hear big three a lot throughout this series. Big three would be Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Those are the big three consumer credit reporting agencies or CRAs. But if you go to them directly and you have a relationship with them, like Experian Credit Works, those have arbitration agreements. We're going to talk about what that means in different parts of this series, but that's not good. Basically, it means if you want to sue and invoke your consumer rights, that you have to do in secret behind closed doors with an arbitration that's not done in court with open rights to transparency and to discovery. And again, even quote free reports, services, apps that come from the big three, or even some of the other ones like Credit Karma, beware. They come with some restrictions and you could be giving up certain rights. If you get your reports directly from annualcreditreport.com or that 877 number or the mail in request form, you're safe. That's definitely how we recommend pulling credit reports. Okay, so let's talk about consumer best practices and why is it important? Well, first of all, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or the FCRA, we're going to talk about that a lot throughout this series of basic, advanced, and pro videos. It protects, those protections require a consumer report. So no Credit Karma reports, no reseller reports that you might get, or what's called a tri-merge report that when you're applying for a mortgage, for example, no app-based consumer disclosures again, like Credit Karma app or the other ones. Those aren't going to be actually official consumer reports, so you can't use those to really know officially what's in your reports. But also, if you ever need to sue, you actually have to have consumer reports. And then do not get fooled with gimmicks like boosting products. These companies are not your friends, as I put up here on the slide. We are the product, not the client or the consumer for the credit reporting agencies. We are the product. The information about us forms these products that are then sold, and a lot of money is made selling that information about us. So we need to look at it from that angle. And understanding these basics, can really lead to financial and credit success. Lastly, if you have any questions, we want you to reach out. We're going to talk a lot about different protections that you have as consumers, especially protections that can lead to debt forgiveness and trade line account deletion from credit reports, and maybe even thousands of dollars with little to no risk. So buckle up. We're so excited to have you on the Consumer Law 101 for Individual Consumers course. For more information, visit www.consumerlaw101.com or swiftlawnorth.com. Thank you.